I love it when we have somebody on the show who also has a book.
This is Auto Collabs.
We do that a lot.
We do. And one of the things, like, you know, whenever you have a book without a major publisher, I think, and you know, I have one, I wrote one, and really the reward of having the book is writing the book and getting all your thoughts in a line, because I found that it helps you live out those thoughts and those strategies, because, you know, the three of us come up with like one new idea every 22 seconds.
Well, what it does is it changes your commitment level to it, right? Because now other people have read and thought about the thoughts that you have, right? And so all of a sudden you're like, no, I'm going to actually commit to that way of thinking, that way of life, that way of perceiving the world. And you see it through and through. We've gotten to know Adam obviously through a few different mechanisms and just from being around the industry, and you can see him living out the thesis that he believes in and what's present in his book. And so I'm excited to have a conversation about it with him, because that's the conversation that he's going to love as well. Right. So we hope that you enjoy this conversation. That'll work.
Hey, Adam, it's so good to be with you on this podcast after spending a little time with you back in Public Policy Day. It's the first time we've gotten to reconnect. Good to have you here.
I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
You know, were you going to ask something, Kyle? You just took an inhale.
Not at all. I just took a big breath.
Okay, so one of the things that we love to do on this show is let people get to know the person a little bit, because, you know, we'll talk about F&I, we'll talk about that stuff in a minute. But give us like the 2-minute on like how you got in the industry and why.
Yeah, it was on accident. You know, I was working at
join the club. Yeah,
working at a restaurant. I was in Panama City Beach for a week, just having a blast. I get back from my vacation, and the owner of the restaurant says, "Hey, good news, bad news." And I'm like, "All right, give me the bad." He goes, "We're closing the restaurant." I'm like, "What?
What's the good news?"
Loved my job. He goes, "You're going with me to the Toyota dealership." And I'm like, "What?" So he took me down there. His name's Gordon Carver. Got to know the GM, and you know, I took a little time to make the deal because I was hesitant of being a car salesman. And as a matter of fact, I requested to be a porter. So I started my first 120 days as a porter, and then sales. 3 years later, F&I, and now I just, you know, I help people.
Wait, so your restaurant owner took you to the dealer. Why did the restaurant
How did that happen?
I'll tell you.
I want to know that story.
He's like, because I had the newspaper and it says you can make 70,000 in your first year. And I'm going to give you an interesting reference.
Savant at selling cars. Gordon was a 30 car guy, like when no one was doing it. And it was all just customers coming in. He built a base. He stepped away to help his wife open up the restaurant. So he just stepped away. It was kind of like not a permanent thing, I don't believe. But he was at the restaurant quite a bit. So when that fell through, he's like, "We're going right here." And that's what we did. So
that's so cool.
Yeah.
Like someone gave you a shot. Like, this is the shot. This is where you go. This is where it happens. When you were still at the store, you were a 40 under 40, right? How long ago was that?
That was at the tail end of my career. That was, you know, that was basically, I was running a big dealer group in St. Louis and got nominated. And that was a lot of fun too. That's kind of where my career
because like, okay, look, every time you say it, you're like, yeah, is it in my career, the whole thing. Yeah. Just so you know, like if you calculate how many people get this in the last out of, I don't know, 2 million people in the industry, you know, over the last 20 years, only 800 people. So you're in that list. What do you think? You get nominated, but then you go through all this stuff. What was the thing that kind of was the calling card that helped you stand out, that said, this is why, you know, this person is kind of changing the game?
Yeah, great question. I think it was my career. I mean, I delivered over 20,000. Very few people have done this, but I delivered over 20,000 retail deals. Like I delivered, funded, completed, and I built a huge referral base. I was an F&I manager that sold almost 20 cars a month. I had people just coming in to see me, and I just built something special. I took my job very serious. I invested in myself. I'm all things F, and I'm madly in love with that space. So.
Wow.
Salespeople find it hard to get people referring back. Like I remember, you know, it was always like, okay, call the people, get the referral, right? But there's you can't just make the call. There's something that you do in the mid time. What do you think? You know, can you point to like one or two reasons why you had success driving people to refer people or to come back to you over time, outside of just like, I treated them well? Was there like a tangible thing or a way that you crafted the entire conversation that led to that volume of repeat and referral business?
I absolutely love that question. So I will use a reference out of a book, Unreasonable Hospitality. All right.
Let's
So
go.
Come on now.
well, like here. So as an F&I manager, I provide a service, and a service, it's active service is a thing that I do, right? But it's how you make people feel in that process is what really matters and really equates to hospitality. So what I would do is I would genuinely connect. Like I would ask real questions and really listen and just really get to know people. Now, there were days where I'm 5 deep and I have to do that quicker and get involved early. And that's why getting involved early in the transaction is critical as an F&I professional. But I would connect with people. I'd make them laugh. I'd make them feel special. And they knew I truly cared. Every one of our clients, our guests, had my cell phone number. I made sure that no matter what, you call me, you text me, you need something. I don't know if you know this, but if you were to check every F&I manager's voicemail in the industry, how many of those mailboxes?
They're full.
We already know the answer.
So that's a pet peeve of mine, by the way. They should never be full, but direct access to me is that you're that last touch point from the transaction standpoint, right? Mm-hmm. So that's I think the magic on it, you know?
Yeah. It's like simple magic though.
Yeah.
Check your voicemail, call them back, you know?
I mean, gosh, you kind of feel like, I mean, my voicemail is where communication goes to die, and I'm not an F&I manager, but you would think that I've had literally, I just, I've bought several vehicles out of state, and I had that experience like 2 or 3 times. Now, granted, I had like text messages and like we were outside of that, but I can't imagine that isn't like one of the simplest things to fix. You have a unique perspective because you serve so many F&I departments and dealer groups on a regular basis. So you kind of get the advantage of this bird's eye view on common issues, common problems, common challenges in this day and age. Can you give us 2 or 3 of the things that you are seeing a lot of, maybe that weren't always issues, but have become issues in the last 12 to 24 months?
Yeah, that's an easy, I could give you 100. So let me be just real fair here, and this is broadly speaking.
He's like doom scrolling.
Okay, so there is a lack of process and accountability. So when you really take over a store, get involved in a store, when the process is dialed in and there's somebody really monitoring the process, and we're managing with data, and from the GM down, everybody's kind of in unity. Those stores run at a very, very high level. Those stores produce above industry standard. The stores that lack a process, and especially if there's nobody holding that process accountable, you just run subpar numbers. So that is a problem right there. The second issue that I'm seeing a ton as of recent, there's a lack of development. So, a lot of the industries kind of right now, we should focus on F&I. We should be training more, investing more, going to more F&I schools, dialing in our craft, getting better at our product knowledge. Margin compression's real. We know that, right? So F&I, the spotlight's on us right now. There's a lack of commitment to professional coaching. That's a big one that I'm experiencing and seeing, which is good for me in my business. Like that helps, but that's a big issue.
Well, and when I look at, the positions in the dealership, it seems like we have, as an industry, especially over the last 3 to 4 years, and now it's getting really highlighted because people are going, people aren't tripping and falling into cars anymore. They need a real salesperson. So we've really focused on frontline training as an industry, but there's not a ton of focus on managerial training, whether that be F&I or sales or business development training. There's not a focus on what I would call like continued development of the manager. And so you calling that out, saying like, no, this is, people kind of get there. We train them for a few months, and then hopefully they always run good numbers. Hopefully they always are compliant. Hopefully, how do you encourage dealers that maybe haven't put a focus on that continued training of the managerial staff to find those inroads and those avenues to do that?
Yeah. Before I answer that, let me piggyback on your statement, because what you said was profound. I own a company in the dental space. Okay. So my clients who are doctors, you got to have so many hours of continuing education, even hygienists.
Mandatory, right? Or you can't
You
practice
can't
anymore.
even practice, right? So when you look at it going back to auto, yeah, there's sales training, but you got some F&I training, a little more than, I don't see a whole lot. What about sales manager training? What about BDC department? You don't see, there are a few companies, don't get me wrong, there's some training out there, but you're right, we don't focus on it. And so I think
you're like business opportunity, sales manager training.
there needs to be more of it, because here too, if you were to ask me what's the quickest way to increase my F&I production, my profitability, I wouldn't say hire me. I would say the first thing you would need to do is get the sales manager and the F&I manager as one.
Yeah.
As one. They're a single unit, one goal, one vision, one mission, same values. You dominate that way, right? And so to answer your question is how do you bring this and make this make sense to a dealer? It's really, you got to get in front of them and show them data. If you can just show a dealer real data in a store similar in their market, what it's capable of doing, that's the math doesn't lie. So it's getting in front of the dealer and showing them math, and finding somebody being willing to change too, right? That's the key is getting through to the dealer and the GM and the team that change is not a bad thing, because we got to change something. Otherwise we're going to continue to get what we're getting right now. Right.
That's right.
Yeah. I wanted to go back to, you said very, very early, you said get involved early in the deal as an F&I manager. And I agree with that. So, but I want to take a different path of it. Is I have heard sales managers and finance managers and dealers have kind of two fields of thought. One being, no, don't get involved too early in the deal, because then you get adopted to the deal, you get sideways of the talk tracks. Like you don't get to remove yourself from kind of like the thesis around the deal, get your head stuck in what that monthly payment might be. So wait until, but then the field of thought that I would agree with you with is, hey, get involved early. So, the structure of the deal, you can find financing options that work. You understand what makes that customer tick, things like that. I remember actually, there's like 4 or 5 things that I'm super, super proud of my time in retail. And one of those is I took an F&I director job, and I had never spun paper in my life. I was on the, I went to the sales manager side first, which is a very rare path. If you know anything about, like, most people go through F&I to the desk. So I went to the desk and then to F&I. And so the only thing I knew how to do when I started in F&I was go back and sit on the desk. And maybe I did it on accident, but we saw literally a $400 per copy increase in less than 60 days. Yeah. And I think it was because I was sitting next to the 2 sales managers. I was aware of every single deal. And whether it was me spinning the paper or my other F&I manager, like, we knew what was going on, and we could get involved early and we needed to. We could start sending that to banks if we needed to, and start to structure that deal so that there was success all the way around for the customer and for the dealership. So how do you, why are there those fields of thoughts when there's so much data around the early intervention still?
Yeah, that's a great question. I wish I had the answer to that question.
You're like, yeah, now I'm trying to figure that out too.
Yeah, all I do know is what you described, having the F&I team sitting with the sales desk, being willing to, here's the thing too, our school of thought, and I wrote about this in the book. I got a story, I can name drop Pete. Pete, my sales manager, was a brilliant desk guy, knew lending institutions equally as well as I did.
You mean in this book?
Yeah. He just, thank you. So anyway, he just didn't like people. He just didn't like people. He didn't want to get out of his desk. He wanted to stick deals. So the deal I made with him was, I'll do every TO. So me and him had a deal. I mean, we worked together 15 years dang near, and he knew I was quick out. Boom, boom. I took control. He never painted me in a corner. We worked deals together, and it was a brilliant relationship. And that's why we ran good numbers. And so that's the way it should be. At the end of the day, we're here to sell cars. We sell cars and we service cars. I don't care if you're a porter or a dealer principal. We sell and service cars and help people. Like, let's get the ego out of the way, so.
So tell me about this book, The Servant Leading F&I Manager. It's not a book about F&I, but it is. Tell us, give us a little summary of what's in here.
Here's the F&I person. I'll call myself an F&I manager. The F&I manager that I was in my 20s looks nothing like the F&I professional that I was in my 30s. And so I share stories of things, stories of the old way into the right way, and really how to embrace leadership and personal development. So it's all about becoming a better version of you, not just because you can lift yourself, but you can lift others. So really that's what this book's about, is serving, and how an F&I department can truly serve every single department within the four walls of the dealership and build these relationships. And so it's just I wrote it just because it was like, I felt like I'm not at the end of my career, but it's, I haven't spun deals live in a store since I think 2019 was the last time I took a retail transaction. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to kind of like finish my career with a manuscript of, kind of my story.
I like it. Key takeaways from one of the chapters on Leadership Redefined. What chapter is this? Chapter 16, Learn to Lead. Key takeaways: servant leadership is about prioritizing the development and well-being of others. Leadership is a privilege and should be exercised with humility and integrity. And then empowering your team and fostering their growth leads to long-term success. It sounds just like good leadership principle and in an F&I wrapper.
Yeah.
And I've actually never heard someone say that if F&I is done right, it serves every single person in the dealership. I don't think people approach it that way.
Yeah. You know why? Okay.
I think F&I. Okay. So just, you're going to tell us why.
We're going to hit the stereotype. Go.
The stereotype is that F&I is isolated in a hallway where they make a ton of money and they don't want anybody to interfere with that.
Yeah.
The end.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
Like if I'm a porter, what do they do in the F&I office?
Yeah.
They make a boatload of money. Don't bother them. Get them whatever they ask for.
So one of the chapters in the book is about prima donnas. So that's a chapter about old school F&I managers. I wrote it for old school F&I managers. But here's the thing: here, F&I has the ability. So here's what F&I really does: if you do your job right, your job is to get the customer happily engaged in service with products and services that wed them happily. And then if service does what they do right, they come back to sales. It's a symbiotic relationship. So why would you not focus more on retention? See, I was never trained on retention. I was trained on more service contract sales, higher PVR, higher PVR. It's about getting the customer happily engaged in service and having a pay plan where F&I is compensated fairly. It needs to be fair to the dealer, the sales staff, the producer, fair pay plans that are product driven. We don't want weak F&I people getting all the money in reserve and high gross and service contract. We need multiple products with fair spreads. We can have it all. So anyway, that was my TED talk on that. Sorry, I kind of ran.
But it's a total different spin because it's like, no. This is the final effort to make sure this person has a great ownership experience.
Right, because you can certainly ruin a great purchasing experience in the F&I office.
Yes,
for sure.
And you have somebody who should leave feeling excited and taken care of. They can leave there feeling like, oh my gosh, did I just make a mistake? Especially the next day. Yeah. You mean no more put them in the box?
Better, though. We got to be honest, though.
Yeah.
We are getting
without a doubt.
At it as an industry. We're just better.
Without a doubt.
For my retail friends that may see this, like, you can agree it's getting better. I bought a car a week ago and had the absolute best experience of my life buying a car. I bought a car. I'm going to shout out Munganass Lexus. Bought a new LS. I mean, the hospitality that I was in and out of there. I hadn't even driven the car yet. I expected to be there for 3 hours at least, just because I was looking at a few. I was going to drive a handful because I had my eyes set up. I was there for 90 minutes through finance, car detailed. I had 3 managers shake my hand. The F&I person was quick, to the point, transparent. Here's what it is. I walked out of there like,
just floored.
This is how it's done.
He walked out there. He was like, I'm going to be out of a job if everyone keeps doing it this way.
I messaged the dealer principal. I said, unreal experience. Google reviews are coming. And
Wow.
I think
We
you're
gotta
right.
tag 'em in this
And this
episode.
is what we say. We keep saying, we're like, I just think auto is just a story that hasn't told its best side. And that's all over the country. What you just said is not an isolated incident. Are there still bad actors? Absolutely. There's bad dentists, there's bad restaurants, there's bad anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the prevailing narrative in auto that's actually untold is that dealers are getting way better. They are investing in training. They are understanding retention. They are excellent at customer experience. They are reading books like Unreasonable Hospitality and Extreme Ownership and leadership
and talking
books,
about it and sharing
talking
it and
about
trying to outdo one another.
Yeah. I mean, I went to DMSC. We were at ASOTU. Everybody at both of those was not interested in status quo.
No.
I love it.
I'll tell you what.
I bet you between those two events, there's 5,000 retail rooftops represented.
Without a doubt. It's a third of the industry.
Wow.
It's right there.
You know what's terrifying to me? And you said it, and now I'm just going to think about it. There are bad dentists out there.
There are.
I know it.
He's like, and they still get certifications every single year.
And you get referrals, certifications, and they suck. And they're gonna take your money. And what are you gonna do?
Well, Adam, we see your passion, and I love that you're serving this particular part of the industry, because I think, as we talked about, the leadership side of our business, the management side of our business has not had continuing education. So I love that you're passionate about it, passionate clearly about F&I and its impact on the entire dealership. Thanks for spending a little bit of time with us. I know we'll talk to you here soon, and thanks for joining us on Auto Collabs.
Yeah. You guys rock. I appreciate you at a high level. Thank you.
You all haven't worked in a dealership, but I knew and still know some F&I prima donnas.
Listen, okay, hold on.
And these
I did
people-
work in a dealership.
Okay, yeah, that's
Michael
right,
Cirillo's the outcast here. I
Okay,
did
that's
work.
true. That's
no,
true.
and I just remember that the F&I manager in the dealership I worked with, I could not for the life of me figure out why he seemed to have the most money and why everyone seemed to cater to him.
It's a special talent. So, but I think, what Adam is pointing out is that way of thinking so individualistically is removing itself from the dealership ecosystem. We're seeing F&I managers become more leaders across the org, lean into the rest of the organization's profitability and into the retention and thinking about the deal early and the consumer. And I appreciate what Adam's trying to do in make leaders out of F&I professionals, because I do think that's a place that can see a lot of the store, and think with a different perspective.
I'm not contributing anything out of protest. No, but you know what? Think about this. What you're saying, Kyle, makes all the sense in the world. Why? Because I would venture to say, of all the negative reviews about dealerships that exist in the world, it wasn't the sales process. It wasn't the test drive. It wasn't even getting to circle the number and initial it. It was the breakdown that happens in the handoff from the sales department to the F&I, because you all of a sudden are invited into a glass cage, if you're lucky to be in a dealership that has windows, and the F&I manager has their computer backing to you. You don't get to see what they're typing, and they're just doing all these things, and you have no clue, and there's so many questions. And then all of a sudden, because that rapport often is not established, it seems as though they start hitting you. Well, you're going to want this, you're going to want that, you're going to, most of the time people feel bamboozled. It's by the numbers. I didn't get a good deal. Well, who's responsible for presenting all of that? It's the F&I manager. And so one of the things that I've come to appreciate about Adam is his advocacy for personal leadership and personal accountability, and what that does to impact a customer's experience, how he explains things, why he chooses to explain certain things, because he knows, I think you said it, Kyle, in a past episode, all of that goes it's a major contributor into retention, which is actually the easier part of doing business. And so I've always appreciated that about Adam. He's a individual of tremendous self-accountability, which I admire.
Yep. Well, hey, we hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as we did. On behalf of Paul J. Daly, Michael Cirillo, and myself, Kyle Mountsier, thanks for joining us on Auto Collabs. Welcome to Auto Collabs. Why are we recording?
Are we rolling yet?